all your love on the new intro. I told you guys in a recent ramble video that I really wanted to revamp the channel, and I had to bribe Sean to make me a new intro, and I created a new banner and all that fun stuff, but nobody said anything about the banner yet, so definitely check that out. I don't know what this is. Whatever. Anyway, I also this morning created a TikTok. I'm not sure if I'm gonna keep it or not, but I'm just trying to come up with more ways to engage with you guys outside of YouTube. Anyway, I have a solved but unsolved-ish case for you this evening, and this case broke my daggum heart, y'all. I kid you not. Let me just make sure my phone over here is on silent, because every time I think it is, and it's not, and then it goes off. And why did I even bring it upstairs? I don't even know. Let's see. It's not like anybody's talking to me anyway. Alright. I spent way too much time on my phone. Hands up if you also do. Leave me a heart in the comments. Alright, so this is the case of Jenny Nicholl. And like I said, it broke my heart. The more I researched this case, the more I was like, what the heck is happening in the world? Like, oh my goodness sakes. Okay, hold on. I was not prepared. I'm a slacker. Just ignore me. My computer keeps doing this thing where it keeps changing my, like, start bar or whatever, and it's really ticking me off here. Okay. Jenny Nicholl was born on October 6th, 1985 in County Antrim of Northern Ireland. So a girl after my own heart right away. She grew up, though, as a Yorkshire girl through and through. Her family settled in Richmond after Jenny's elder brother joined the British Army, and he was posted to nearby Catterick Garrison. If I mispronounce things, I am so sorry, y'all. I make notes, but then sometimes my notes don't make sense to even me. So this is one of the largest military installations in Europe. Jenny's father, Brian, was a retired Army major who had also served his country. Her mother, Anne, who I will be featuring a lot in this case, worked as a cleaner and devoted herself to raising her children in their adopted hometown. Standing 5'6", with light fair hair that fell to her shoulders, often pulled up in a ponytail, Jenny had the kind of presence that drew people to her. She had green eyes that people said sparkled with life, especially when she talked about one of the great loves of her life, music. The walls of her bedroom were covered with posters of Jimi Hendrix. He was described as her idol, and she spent hours practicing guitar riffs, trying to capture that raw electric sound that had captivated a generation decades before. Now, music wasn't just a hobby for Jenny. It was her passion. It was her identity. She played lead guitar for a band called No Fouling. This band had carved out a following in Richmond's tight-knit music scene. They played the pubs where locals gathered after work. Their sound is described as a blend of classic rock influences and youthful energy. In 2002, when Jenny was just 17, No Fouling reached the final Battle of the Bands competition, and this was a triumph that cemented their status as rising stars. They performed at the Richmond Live Music Festival, and Jenny loved every minute of it. The crowds She had her job, her music, her friends, her love of nature. But Jenny also had a dangerous secret that we're going to get into today. The summer of 2005 was warm and pleasant in North Yorkshire. Is it Yorkshire or Yorkshire? My brain just went Yorkshire, but June 30th dawned bright. The kind of late spring that promised a beautiful evening perfect for outdoor activities. And Jenny went about her normal routine on that Thursday. Nothing in her behavior suggested that anything unusual was about to happen, and this is important as we go on. As the afternoon progressed, Jenny gathered all of these items that suggested she was headed out for another camping trip. Sleeping bag, her outdoor gear, and her personal items like her makeup bag and a stuffed teddy. Her parents were accustomed to their daughter's occasional spontaneous, I have English, spontaneous adventures with her friends, so they didn't really question her preparations. At this point, Jenny is nearly 20 years old, and she had always been responsible about these overnight outdoor excursions. At 6 o'clock that evening, Jenny kissed her mother goodbye and said, "I won't be home tonight." There was no hint of distress, no cry for help, no indication that Jenny had any idea what she was walking towards. So Anne watched her daughter walk toward her white Rover 214i parked outside their home on Bolton Avenue. Jenny climbed in the car, started the engine, and drove away. And this is the last confirmed sighting of Jenny Nicholl alive. The morning of July 1st, 2005 started with one of Jenny's friends becoming increasingly worried about where Jenny was. The two of them had made plans for that night, and Jenny was supposed to come and pick her up. When Jenny didn't arrive, this friend started to call her cell phone, and it rang through to voicemail. So a little while later, she tried again, and she sent text messages, and she got no response from Jenny. As Friday stretched through the weekend with no word from Jenny, concern starts rippling through her circle of friends. She wasn't responding to calls, she wasn't online, and for a young woman who's normally quite communicative with her friends, her silence was described as alarming and completely out of character for Jenny. By Monday, July 4th, the situation had escalated from worrying to genuinely frightening. Jenny failed to show up for her shift at the co-op supermarket. Her supervisor tried to reach her, but had no success. Jenny was a reliable employee, and missing work was completely out of character for her. So the supervisor contacted Jenny's parents, and Anne Nicholl felt her stomach drop. 4 days had passed since she'd last seen her daughter. That afternoon, Anne filed an official missing persons report with the North Yorkshire Police, and then determined to find her daughter herself, and I imagine yank a knot in her tail, as my mom would say. Anne began driving around Richmond, searching places that she knew Jenny frequented. At approximately 3:30 p.m., Anne turned her car into the park of the Holly Hill Inn, a pub on the southwestern outskirts of town. And there, sitting in its parking space, waiting for its owner to arrive, was Jenny's white Rover 214i. Anne approached the car with a mixture of hope and dread. Now, if you're a true crime enthusiast like myself, Anne does the one thing you're not supposed to do when you find a car of a missing person. And if you know what it is, let me know down below. I'll wait. she touched the car. It was unlocked, and she looked inside, hoping for a note, some explanation, something as to where her daughter could be. The interior of the car appeared normal. No signs of a struggle, no blood spatter, no obvious indicators of any violence. It just seemed like Jenny had parked the car and walked away. No indications of where she could be or with whom. But the discovery of Jenny's abandoned car made this kind of from a missing persons case switch to something potentially more sinister. Detective Inspector Pete Martin of North Yorkshire Police took charge of this investigation, and he immediately recognized the troubling implications that this car brought. Detective Inspector Martin told reporters in those early days, when a young woman leaves home with camping gear and her car ends up abandoned at a pub, we have to consider all of the possibilities. And at this time, we are asking for the public's help. Someone somewhere must have seen Jenny on June 30th or July 1st, and we need those witnesses to come forward. The investigation team began the methodical work of piecing together Jenny's life and movements. They created a detailed description that was circulated to the media outlets, and they posted hundreds of flyers throughout Richmond and the surrounding areas. Jenny Nicholl was 19 years old, standing 5'6", slim build, fair hair, green eyes, last seen wearing blue jeans, black trainers, a sleeveless crop top, and her distinctive khaki-colored hooded parka that she wore all the time. Officers fanned out across Richmond, conducting interviews with Jenny's friends, family members, coworkers, bandmates, and anyone who frequented the pubs where she performed. They visited the co-op supermarket where she worked. They talked to her colleagues about her recent mood and behavior. They asked her bandmates about upcoming gigs and whether Jenny had mentioned any plans or concerns. One of the friends told investigators that Jenny was the type of person that kept things close to the chest. She didn't confide in people easily. She had her own private life, and she didn't share much about it. And it made it hard to know what may have been going on with her. And this secretive nature would prove to be one of investigators' biggest challenges in this case. Without knowing who Jenny had been hanging out with or where she typically spent her time, investigators had to work that much harder to establish her movements and associations. On July 5th, just days after her car was discovered, Anne and Brian decide to search a place called the Sandback Plantation. This wooded area was popular for locals, so they did outdoor activities there, and the Nicholls knew that their daughter enjoyed spending time there. So they walked through the trees, calling out Jenny's name and looking for any sign of her. But what they found instead sent chills through them. significant deployment of resources that underscored how seriously the legal department was taking the situation. This incident room became the nerve center of the operation, with its walls covered in maps, photographs, timelines, and leads to follow. Massive search operations were organized throughout the region. Police search teams, aided by trained search dogs and supported by soldiers from nearby Catterick Garrison, combed through the countryside. They searched the dense woods of the sandbag plantation tree by tree. They examined abandoned buildings. They checked septic tanks on rural farms. They investigated unused wells and explored caves. Over the coming weeks and months, they would search more than 150 locations across North Yorkshire, the Lake District, and even into Scotland. But despite the scale and thoroughness of these searches, they found nothing. No evidence, no body, no trace of Jenny Nicholl beyond the items that her parents had discovered in Sandbag Plantation. As detectives dig deeper into 19-year-old Jenny's life, the carefully guarded secrets start to emerge. Through conversations with her friends and persistent questioning, investigators discover Jenny had been involved in a relationship, and it was with a much older, very married man. The revelation came slowly but reluctantly as friends tried to balance their loyalty to Jenny and their desire to help find her. This man was identified as 45-year-old David Hodgson. There's no T. Hodgson. He was married with 2 daughters who attended school with Jenny. The age gap alone raised quite a few red flags in my brain. I don't know about yours. She's 19, he's 45. He's married and he's involved with a teenager he has known since she was a child. It is reportedly assumed that they met, allegedly, I guess that's the word, met when she was 14 years old. And the more investigators learned about David, the more troubling this picture became. On July 9th, 2005, 9 days after Jenny was last seen, the North Yorkshire police brought David to the Richmond police station for questioning. Detective Inspector Martin and his team sat across from David in an interview room, watching his body language as they asked him questions. David adamantly denied having any romantic or intimate relationship with Jenny. He said, "I knew her through my daughters." He insisted that was it. They went to school together. I may have seen her around town, at the pubs maybe, but we weren't involved. I don't know where she is. I don't know anything about her disappearance. But the investigating officers don't believe that crock of junk. David's denials seemed too emphatic, his explanations almost rehearsed. So they pressed harder. But David stuck to his story, and without concrete evidence to hold him, they had to let him go. However, he remained firmly in their sights as a person of interest. Investigators continued digging into Jenny's life, and another complication arises. Jenny had recently begun seeing another man, a man named Robert Hodgson. And you're thinking, Shannon, wait a minute, didn't you say David's last name was Hodgson? You're right, I did. This is David's older brother. I don't know how old he is, I just know he's older than David's 45. In May of 2005, just a few weeks before Jenny disappeared, Robert and Jenny had gone on a camping trip together. After that trip, Robert had tried to contact Jenny claim that investigators find pretty difficult to believe. Both brothers had spent considerable time building what they describe as huts in the sandbag plantation. And this is the very place where evidence of Jenny being was found. It seemed implausible that Robert didn't know his brother was using those same huts that they had built to spend time with Jenny. Nevertheless, investigators could find no evidence that Robert himself had been involved in Jenny's disappearance or had any knowledge of a crime. He cooperated with police, even taking them to the location where they had gone camping, although a thorough search of that area gave them nothing. So, the discovery of this love triangle of sorts provided investigators with a compelling motive for David. Multiple people who knew him described him as intensely jealous and possessive when it came to Jenny. Which, ew, dude, okay. The thought of her becoming involved with his own brother would have been like this crushing blow to his ego and a direct challenge to David's control over her. So the day after David's initial police interview, something extraordinary happens that would eventually help crack this case. On July 10th, Jenny's mobile phone, which had been switched off and silent since June 30th, suddenly becomes active. Friends and family members start to receive text messages, supposedly from Jenny herself. Jenny's friend Jennifer received a message that said, "Hi Jen, tell Jack I am okay. No, everyone's going to be mad. Tell them that I'm sorry. I'm living in Scotland with my boyfriend. Dad's gonna kill me and Mom doesn't give a shite. Hope Nick doesn't grass me up. Keeping phone off. Tell Dad car jumps out of gear in stores. Put it back in auction. Tell him I'm sorry." Another friend of Jenny's named Nicholl got a similar message. "Thought you were grassing me up. Might be in trouble with my dad. Told Mom I was lying. Didn't give a bleep. Been to Keswick camping. Was great. Have to go. See you." And then on July 14th, an even longer message arrives on Brian's phone, which is her dad. Quote, "Why do you hate me? I know Mom does. Told her I was going. I ain't coming back and the pigs won't find me. I am happy living up here. Everyone hates me and Rich. Only mate I got is Jack. Text you a couple weeks. Tell pigs I'm nearly 20, ain't coming back. She got me in this blank. It's her fault, not mine. Get blamed for everything. I'm sorry. Okay, just had to leave. No food in and always searching me room, eating me sweets. I have to go, okay? I am very sorry. Kiss." The messages contained specific personal details that only someone close to Jenny would know. The mechanical problems with her rover, the names of her friends, references to family dynamics. The cellular data showed that the messages had been sent from towers near Carlisle in Cumbria and Jedburgh in the Scottish borders, both locations quite distant from Richmond itself. And for Anne, these messages provided a glimmer of hope that maybe Jenny was alive after all, just angry and running away. So Anne immediately made the journey to both Carlisle and Jedburgh, driving through the streets, showing Jenny's photograph to shopkeepers and passersby, visiting hostels, asking anyone and everyone if they had seen her daughter. But despite the efforts of a desperate mother, no one had seen Jenny, and there was no trace of her in either location. Detective Inspector Martin studied these text messages messages really carefully, and he noticed some kind of inconsistencies. Something about these messages felt wrong to him. The tone didn't quite match what he expected Jenny's to match. He obviously had seen her phone records at this point, and her phrasing seemed off as well. So Martin told reporters that he thought that maybe they were sent by someone else. Someone close enough to Jenny to know her personal details. Someone who was hoping to convince her friends and family that she was alive and well, when in fact, they believe the opposite is true. After these messages were sent, Jenny's phone was permanently switched off, and it is yet to be recovered. The summer of 2005 progressed with no sightings of Jenny, and no further communication with her friends or family. These text messages had provided this spark of hope, but that hope faded again as weeks passed with no additional contact. Anne and Brian waited by the phone, but it remained silent. In November of 2005, 5 months after Jenny vanished, Detective Inspector Martin made a somber announcement. This investigation was being reclassified from a missing persons case to a murder inquiry. Martin explained to the assembled media that they had reached this decision based on several extenuating factors. In cases where someone voluntarily disappears, we typically see evidence of planning. People withdraw money from their bank accounts, they arrange transportation, they book accommodations, they make contact with friends to set up a place to stay. These small but telling details usually provide a trail that indicates intention. However, Jenny Nicholl did none of these things. Jenny's bank accounts had remained untouched since June 30th. No withdrawals, purchases, or transactions of any kind. She had not contacted any friends for help or money. She left behind treasured possessions, including her beloved guitar, photographs, and items that held deep sentimental value. So for someone supposedly restarting her life over in Scotland, she had taken remarkably little things with her. The investigation team continued their exhaustive searches. In March of 2006, officers searching Sandbag Plantation made another significant discovery. They found Jenny's childhood teddy bear, a 10-inch toy dressed in a military-style outfit that her parents immediately recognized. It had been a Christmas present when Jenny was just 6 years old. She had kept it in her attic during her teenage years, but she had brought it back down to her bedroom in 2004 for reasons that only Jenny knows. Also discovered on the plantation was Jenny's CD player, another personal item that she cherished. These finds, combined with the earlier discovery of her nightdress and cosmetics, painted a grim picture. Someone had deliberately concealed Jenny's belongings in the woods. At the end of July of 2005, police made a startling discovery that further implicated one David Hodgson. Officers found him in one of the huts near Hudswell, not the Hudswell. He was semi-conscious, having tried to unalive himself with a bottle full of medicine and wine. He was rushed to the hospital, and he survived, but this incident raised some pretty urgent questions. Why would this man, who had no involvement with this girl, he just knew her through his daughters, attempt to do this after her disappearance? After his recovery, David underwent further police interviews. relationship had ended approximately 12 months before Jenny's disappearance, suggesting that she couldn't have been meeting with him on June 30th. But investigators don't believe this man's crock of poopy. I'm in a bad mood today. All my cuss words are trying to come out. The evidence was mounting, and every piece pointed right at David. Over the next 2 years, the investigation team painstakingly assembled their case. Forensic specialists conducted detailed examinations of the huts in Sandbag Plantation, and they found DNA evidence that proved that Jenny and David had engaged in sexual activity in at least 2 of these structures, and this contradicted David's claim that their relationship had ended a year prior to her disappearing, and also proved that he had lied about taking her to those locations. The man's a liar, y'all. But perhaps some of the most compelling evidence came from an innovative source: forensic linguistics. Detective Inspector Martin, with that little niggle in the back of his brain, reached out to Dr. Malcolm Coulthard, a renowned expert in forensic linguistics from Birmingham University, to analyze these suspicious text messages. Dr. Coulthard began by examining messages known definitively to be written by Jenny, texts to friends from before June 30th. He then analyzed messages that they believe were written by David. Through meticulous comparison, he identified 9 specific low-level stylistic features that discriminated between their texting styles. And this is crazy to me, and it really got me thinking. I wonder if I do some of this stuff and don't even know it. Jenny consistently used the words my and myself in her messages. David, influenced by a Yorkshire dialect, used me and me-self. Jenny wrote out the word to, like T-O, in her texts, and David frequently used the number 2 as a substitute. Now, notably, he didn't place a space after it the way that Jenny did when she used text to speak. Or text to speak. There were differences in punctuation, capitalization, and overall sentence structure. These weren't conscious choices, but ingrained linguistic habits, the digital equivalent of handwriting analysis. When Dr. Coulthard analyzed the messages sent after Jenny's disappearance, the patterns matched David's style and not Jenny's. The linguistic fingerprints were clear. Investigators also examined David's movement in the critical days following Jenny's disappearance. They discovered he had rented a car from a local agency on 2 specific dates, July 9th and July 14th. And you guessed it, these were the exact same dates that the suspicious text messages had been sent from Jenny's phone. When detectives analyzed the mileage recorded on these rental vehicles, they found that the distances traveled correspond remarkably closely to a round-trip journey from Richmond to Carlisle, and then from Richmond to Jedburgh, 2 locations from which the messages had been sent. This isn't a coincidence. This is a calculated deception. David had driven hundreds of miles to send text messages from Jenny's phone, creating a false trail designed to make everyone believe that she was alive and starting a new life in Scotland. atmosphere became the stage for 5 weeks of intense legal combat. For Anne and Brian, sitting in the public gallery day after day, it was an ordeal that tested every ounce of their emotional strength. This case was unusual from the start. British law does not require a body to secure a conviction, but such cases are pretty rare and present some unique challenges. Without a scene, without a body, and without a clear understanding of exactly how Jenny died, the prosecution had to construct a narrative based entirely on circumstantial evidence, forensic analysis, and logical inference. The prosecutor, a Queen's Counsel, experienced in complex criminal cases, opened with a stark assertion. The prosecution's case is that David Hodgson murdered Jenny Nicholl on the night she disappeared, and disposed of her body somewhere in the neighboring countryside with the intention that it would never be found. And he did this because he was consumed with jealousy of her relationship with his brother Robert, and that he could not bear to lose control over a young woman that he had been grooming since she was 14 years old. The prosecution methodically presented their evidence. They showed the jury photographs of the huts that were built in Sandbag Plantation, where Jenny and David had conducted their secret relationship. They presented the DNA evidence that proved that the two had engaged in intimate activities in at least 2 of these structures. They displayed Jenny's personal items that had been found hidden in the woods: the teddy bear, the CD player, the nightdress, and the cosmetic bag. Dr. Malcolm Toltard took the stand to explain his linguistic analysis. Using slides and visual aids, he walked the jury through the subtle but consistent differences between Jenny's texting style and David's. He showed them genuine messages from Jenny, and then showed them the suspicious messages sent after her disappearance. Everyone has their own linguistic footprint when they communicate, Dr. Coulthard explained. Just as your handwriting is unique to you, so is the way you construct sentences, the words that you choose, and the patterns that you follow. In this case, the messages sent after Jenny's disappearance do not match her established patterns. These patterns match Mr. David Hodgson's patterns instead. The prosecution then presented the evidence about the rental cars. They showed receipts, rental agreements, and, most damningly, the mileage records. A police traffic analyst testified about distances involved, demonstrating with maps how the miles driven on July 9th and 14th aligned almost perfectly with trips to Carlisle and Jedburgh, respectively. This was a calculated deception, the prosecutor told the jury in his closing arguments. David Hodgson killed Jenny Nicholl. He hid her body and then attempted to create the illusion that she was still alive by sending fake text messages from her cell phone. He drove to distant locations to send these messages, hoping to establish a false trail that would lead us away from Richmond and away from him. But he couldn't disguise his own linguistic patterns. The words that he wrote, trying to sound like Jenny, betrayed him in the end. The defense, faced with this mountain of evidence, mounted a desperate counterattack. They argued that without a body, without a crime scene, without any direct witnesses to this murder, the alleged murder, the prosecution's case rested on speculation rather than proven fact. Where is evidence of death? The defense barrister asked the jury. Where is the proof that Jenny Nicholl is dead rather than simply choosing to remain missing? The prosecution asks you to convict based on circumstantial evidence and linguistic analysis. Interesting, perhaps, but hardly the solid foundation needed for a murder conviction beyond reasonable doubt. In a particularly were subjected to aggressive questioning by the defense team, which I cannot. They were asked about their parenting, their relationship with Jenny, their knowledge of her social life. Every aspect of their family life was scrutinized and questioned like under a microscope. Some witnesses, including friends of Jenny's, were reduced to tears after their testimony. After 5 weeks, both sides rested. The judge provided instructions to the jury, explaining that the law required circumstantial evidence and the standard of proof required for a murder conviction. And then the 12 citizens retired to deliberate David Hodgkin's fate. For 10 hours, they examined the evidence, debated the arguments, and weighed the burden of their decision. They were being asked to convict a man of murder without a body, a pretty heavy responsibility. On February 19th, the jury foreman stood in the hushed courtroom and announced their unanimous verdict. Guilty. The Nicholls embraced each other, streaming tears down their faces, tears of relief, of vindication, and profound sadness all mixed together. They had their answer now, even if it was the one that Jenny was dead, she'd been murdered, and her killer was finally being held accountable. David showed no emotion as the verdict was read. He displayed not a flicker of remorse. I should not be. Anyway, no acknowledgement of his crime, no hint of humanity, nothing. And that to me is creepy. David was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 18 years before he would be eligible to even apply for parole. This case made legal history. In September of 2008, the Council for the Registration of Forensic Practitioners formally recognized forensic linguistics as a specialty, acknowledging the significant role linguistic evidence played in securing David's conviction. In November 2009, a coroner formally ruled that Jenny Nicholl was deceased and that her death was an unlawful killing, providing official legal closure, even though her body remained hidden. David Hodgson's conviction provided the family with legal justice, but offered little in the way of emotional relief. Jenny was dead, murdered by a man who had groomed her and manipulated her for years, and they still didn't know where she was actually located. This unique form of torture has persisted for nearly 2 decades. The inability to conduct a proper burial, to have a place to visit, to put flowers, to maintain a memorial of Jenny's life. These absences compound the grief in ways that are difficult for those who have not experienced it to fully comprehend. Every holiday, birthday, anniversary brings fresh pain. Police have continued periodic searches for Jenny's remains, investigating new tips and utilizing advanced search technologies. As of 2025, these efforts have been unsuccessful in finding Jenny Nicholl. David Hodgson has launched multiple appeals since his conviction, all of which have been denied. He has applied for parole several times. Each application has been refused, thank goodness. The parole board has consistently cited his continued denial of responsibility, his refusal to disclose information about Jenny's body, and his lack of genuine remorse as factors indicating that he remains a danger to public safety. And the Nicholls have been clear about their approach. They have never directly asked David Hodgson where Jenny is. They explained that they will not ask him because they will not be put at his mercy or provide him with any sort of feeling like he is in control. Their refusal to give this man that power, even though he's in prison, represents a final act of resistance against his manipulation. I swear. It's Sunday. Anyway, okay, this case ticked me off, you guys. This creepo man groomed this 14-year-old friend of his daughter's, which makes it extra creepy if you ask me, which nobody did, but okay, you're here, so you're listening to my opinion anyway. How do you engage in intimate activities with someone as old as your child? Ew. Now, I'm not faulting Jenny in any way, shape, or form because she was 14 years old. This man groomed her, and the fact that men are still out here doing this to young girls and girls in general just fries my cookies. Oh my goodness. It just makes me so sick to think about this creeper man creeping in on Jenny's life and probably making himself the center of her universe. Oh, I love you, I want to be with you. We all know the story. I'm gonna leave my wife to be with you, or I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna do that. Okay, you're full of baloney. Okay, you are. And I don't know if Jenny was with Robert in a romantical way. I know that he is David's older brother. I don't know how much older. Maybe she just wanted to get out from under David, and she thought that, not literally, I heard that. Who said that? I lost my train of thought now. And she thought that David would get upset over Robert and maybe break up with her, if that's even the right term, break up with. She probably did not see the visceral reaction that this could cause in David, and she probably thought, oh, he loves me, he's never gonna hurt me. And I honestly think that this is one of those cases that could go one of two ways. Either he just snapped and killed her, either by accident or, in a moment of rage, or he methodically planned this. And the reason that her body hasn't been discovered is because he knew exactly where to put it, that no one would find it. It is completely bizarre to me, as I've said so many times here on my channel, that people can literally go missing for years and years and years, in Jenny's case 20-something years, without ever being found. It's bizarre to me that they searched that plantation over and over and didn't find the teddy bear or the CD player until later. Like, how diligently were you searching? Because now, unfortunately, she may just be scattered bones. That's so sad to even think about. And if you weren't looking carefully and methodically at every inch of the ground, you may not have noticed disturbed soil or a pile of leaves that looked a little funny. And it just breaks my heart for her family. And I just get so angry about cases like this. Sometimes I think that maybe I should not be reporting on true crime, because I take every single case straight to my heart and I get so wrapped up in them. Like, I just want to go punch this David guy in the face, and I don't even know what he looks like because I haven't looked at his picture because I don't want to. Yeah. If you're still with me and you're still listening, I have been elbows deep back in the Idaho 4 case with all of the pictures that were released and all of the new information / speculation that has been going on, and I really want to do like another video about that, so you'll have to tell me down below if that is something that you would be interested in. Anyway, I'm gonna cut this off here by saying I love each and every single one of you, and I will see you later on for another video. I do want to do part 2 of Tell Me Lies. I finally got my ex-coworker to watch it. tell you all